It's been over 3 months. Lilly and Jack Sullivan are still missing. No trace, no answers, and the man who was the last to see them, still free.
Days are very stressful ever since the Friday morning when we noticed that the children were gone.
Daniel Martell said they simply slipped out the back door. He said he searched. He said he was terrified. But what if that was never the truth? No witnesses, no surveillance, no one else. Just one man, and a story that doesn't hold. Was Daniel Martell behind their disappearance? Let's take a closer look and see what the silence is hiding. Subscribe to True Child Cases. Part 1. The last one to see them. Daniel Martell's timeline. May 2nd, 2025. A quiet morning in a rural trailer home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. Inside that small home lived a blended family. A mother, her boyfriend, their infant daughter, and 2 young children from a previous relationship, 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan. That morning, the family claimed they were simply feeding the baby when Lilly and Jack quietly slipped out through the back sliding door. It was, according to them, nothing more than a tragic accident. But 6 weeks later, with no sign of the children, no witnesses, and no confirmed sightings after May 1st, the cracks in that story have become impossible to ignore. And one name keeps coming up in whispers and speculation. Daniel Martell, the stepfather and the last person to see the children alive. From the beginning, Daniel positioned himself as cooperative. He told the media he allowed police to search the home early in the investigation. He said he volunteered to take a polygraph test and that he passed. He expressed fear that the children might have been abducted. But despite his seemingly calm demeanor, many watching his interviews were unsettled. His voice lacked tremble. His eyes rarely blinked. He was composed, almost too composed. In situations like this, most parents, even step-parents, crumble in front of cameras. They beg, they plead, they cry. But Daniel was steady, clean, controlled. And when he spoke, it often sounded less like grief and more like someone trying very hard to manage a story. Police never officially confirmed Daniel's polygraph results. It was only he who claimed he passed. But he did admit that RCMP investigators asked him directly, "Did you kill the children?" That question isn't asked lightly. It means investigators had more than just a hunch. They had suspicion. And they had reason to believe Daniel wasn't telling them everything. What complicates matters further is the timeline. According to official reports, the last time anyone outside the home saw Lilly and Jack was the day before, May 1st. There is no surveillance footage, no doorbell cams, no neighbors who reported seeing the children on the morning of May 2nd. In fact, the only people who claim to have seen them that day are Daniel and the children's mother. That's it. Which leads to a darker, more uncomfortable question. What if the children never made it to May 2nd at all? What if something happened the night before, and the story about them slipping out quietly through the back door was just that? A story. The RCMP found no signs of forced entry, no indication of strangers, no trails, nothing to suggest someone came in from the outside, which means either the children wandered off on their own, which remains unproven, or someone inside the house was responsible. And if we accept that possibility, then Daniel Martell becomes more than just a worried stepfather. He becomes the last adult to have unrestricted access to the children before they vanished. He becomes the only known factor in a story with too many unknowns. His own words have also raised eyebrows. In a CBC interview, Daniel casually mentioned that Lilly's pink blanket had been found near a child-sized boot print in a pipeline area. But this detail had never been released by police at that time. Why did Daniel know that? Who told him? Or worse, was he the one who placed it there? When someone knows more than the public is supposed to know, especially in a case involving missing children, that's not just suspicious, it's chilling. Then there's the psychology. Behavioral experts often note that guilty individuals tend to over-explain. They stick too closely to rehearsed narratives. They focus more on sounding innocent than expressing true emotion. Daniel fit that profile alarmingly well. His recounting of events was neat, structured, almost prepackaged. And when asked about his feelings, he spoke in broad terms. Never specific memories of the kids, never tearful regrets, just vague phrases about fear and uncertainty. The children's biological family, including their paternal grandmother, has also voiced concern. After the children's mother moved in with Daniel, their contact with the kids dwindled. The grandmother described how she was once close to them, often visiting, until the relationship with Daniel began. Then things changed. She was shut out. Her son, the children's father, walked away completely after custody was lost. And Daniel became the central figure in the children's lives. And in their final days, the one who was with them, alone. Every criminal investigation begins with three basic pillars: motive, means, and opportunity. Daniel had all three. Was he overwhelmed raising children that weren't biologically his? Did he resent the stress, the pressure, the scrutiny? Was there a breaking point no one saw coming? Or was this something darker, something calculated? He says he has nothing to hide. But the problem with people who have nothing to hide is that they rarely reveal information no one else knew. They don't get ahead of the police. They don't speak calmly about unimaginable loss. And they certainly don't become the focal point of suspicion without cause. As part one ends, we are left with more questions than answers. But one thing is clear. The man at the center of the children's final known moments is not above suspicion. He is under it. And in part two, we'll take a closer look at the pink blanket, the only tangible clue ever found, and ask whether it was left behind in panic or placed with intention. If you believe these children deserve the truth, if you believe silence protects the wrong people, then subscribe to True Child Cases. Help us break through the noise. Share your thoughts. Leave your theories. Because sometimes, justice doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts with people who care enough to ask uncomfortable questions. And we will keep asking until the silence answers. Part 2. The Pink Blanket and a Hidden Truth. It was supposed to be a search like any other. Teams moving through thick woods, volunteers lining the roads, dogs sniffing through brush and culverts. But buried within that first desperate day of searching was one quiet discovery: a pink blanket, a child's blanket. According to Daniel Martell, it belonged to Lilly. He mentioned it during an interview, long before police ever confirmed the detail. He said it was found near a child-sized boot print, close to a pipeline area. He described it like a fact, cool, unquestioned, unprompted. And that's where everything shifts. Why did Daniel know about the blanket? Why was he the only one to mention it publicly? At that point in the investigation, RCMP had not released the existence of any physical evidence. In cases involving missing children, authorities are notoriously tight-lipped for a reason. Releasing sensitive details too soon can compromise the integrity of the case or reveal who knows too much. When someone leaks a clue before police do, it forces one question into the center of the investigation. Did they know because they were told, or because they were there? The placement of the blanket itself is equally suspicious. It wasn't found miles away in a ditch or torn by animals in the forest. It was close enough to the home to feel deliberate, near enough to the search zone to be found on the first day, but far enough to suggest a child couldn't have wandered there by accident. Which raises a dangerous thought. What if the blanket wasn't lost? What if it was planted? It wouldn't be the first time. In countless criminal cases, perpetrators have intentionally left behind objects that appear helpful, something to distract, to mislead, or worse, to send police down the wrong path. A footprint here, a toy there, a piece of clothing meant to say, they walked this way. And once the scent is set, it's hard to pull search teams back. What if the blanket near the pipeline wasn't a trail, but a trap? Daniel's knowledge of the blanket makes it harder to ignore. Was he at the site where it was found? Did he speak to someone who shouldn't have told him? Or did he know because he was the one who left it there? The one who laid it gently near a small boot print, just convincing enough to look like a child's? That's not just speculation. That's a pattern seen in cases across the world, where an insider creates a false breadcrumb trail to hide the real crime scene. And the blanket wasn't just any object. It was something Lilly loved, a comfort item. Children rarely part with such things, so if it was found separated from her, it either means she was taken by force or someone wanted it to appear that way. But here's the twist. Daniel didn't describe the blanket with sorrow. He didn't mention holding it up to his chest or breaking down when he saw it. He reported it almost casually, as if it were a footnote, as if it weren't stained with the terrifying weight of a child gone missing. Even more troubling is the location, a pipeline area, remote, industrial, and quiet. Not a place where a child would typically wander, especially one unfamiliar with the terrain. And certainly not alone. If Lilly and Jack had truly slipped out while playing, wouldn't they have gone somewhere familiar? To the yard, the woods behind the house, or to a neighbor's driveway? But a pipeline? That's where a perpetrator might go. Someone trying to move quickly, to dispose, to mislead. This is where Daniel's story begins to fray. If the children simply wandered off, how did their blanket end up near an obscure industrial zone? If they got lost on foot, how did they travel that far, unseen and unheard, in a short span of time? And why would only a single item, the pink blanket, appear, but not their clothing, toys, or both children themselves? The answer may be too horrifying to speak aloud, that the blanket is all that was left because someone made sure of it. Daniel's timeline remains vague, his reactions composed, his knowledge oddly specific. And in that silence, the pink blanket becomes louder than any interview. It whispers of presence, of placement, of intention. Whether Daniel held it last out of care or concealment, that's what Part 3 will explore. But make no mistake, a child's blanket found in isolation is not just a clue. It's a question, one that demands an answer. And so, we return to the man who brought that clue into the public eye, the man who didn't cry when he spoke of it, the man who wasn't supposed to know. If Daniel Martell revealed the pink blanket to the world before the police did, then what else is he hiding? And how deep does the silence go? If you're following this case, and if you're not satisfied with the half-answers and hushed statements, then subscribe to True Child Cases. We follow the silence, we question the official story, and we speak for those who can't. Lilly and Jack deserve more than quiet. They deserve clarity. And we will not stop until someone breaks. Part 3, Too Calm to Be Innocent. Inside Daniel's interview. There's a certain way people look when they're grieving. It's rarely pretty. Grief is raw, unfiltered, chaotic. It slips through voices, cracks open eyes, stumbles through sentences, especially when children are involved, especially when they're gone. But when Daniel Martell sat down in front of cameras for his interview with CBC News, what viewers saw was not grief, it was control, precision, a man with answers prepared before the questions were even asked. From the moment the interview began, something felt off. He didn't stumble over his words, he didn't avert his eyes. His voice was steady, his body language restrained. There were no trembling hands, no red eyes, no moments of silence where the pain overwhelmed him. And maybe, just maybe, that's what made it so unsettling. Daniel wasn't reacting to the loss of 2 children. He was explaining it, as if it had already been practiced in the mirror. It's often said that the truly guilty don't just lie, they rehearse. They shape their narratives long before they speak them. And in Daniel's case, the timing of his media appearance was critical. It came shortly after he revealed details the public hadn't known, like the discovery of Lilly's pink blanket. But instead of using the platform to show raw emotion or plead for help, he used it to establish clarity, to show composure, to be reasonable. And that's the trap. Because when a man who's just lost 2 children shows no cracks, we're forced to wonder whether he's holding it together or whether he has nothing to grieve. Behavioral analysts have long studied how suspects present themselves under scrutiny. The innocent often appear overwhelmed, inconsistent, emotional, because truth is messy. But those with secrets, they aim for the opposite. They speak in straight lines. They emphasize cooperation. They smile just enough. They claim they have nothing to hide. And Daniel Martell did all of that, to a fault. When asked about the events of May 2nd, Daniel's answers were linear and clean. He described feeding the baby. He said he thought the children were playing. He spoke of the moment they realized it was too quiet. Then came the search. Then came the call to 911. But there were no sharp turns in his story, no hesitations, no conflicting memories. And in real trauma, memory doesn't behave like that. It jumps, it fragments, it falters. But Daniel's version didn't. What's more, he never once broke down when speaking their names. He didn't hesitate when recalling what happened. He didn't even seem angry at the world, at fate, at whoever might have taken them. Instead, he focused on what he'd done right, that he let police search the house, that he passed a polygraph, that he was nervous, yes, but composed enough to volunteer everything. It's a narrative too polished to be spontaneous. Even his choice of language raised questions. He didn't describe Lilly and Jack with specific memories, no mention of Lily's laugh or Jack's favorite toy. He didn't talk about the moment he last saw them running through the house. His words were abstract, distant. He spoke about the situation, the investigation, and the process, as though he were an outsider, not someone at the center of it all. But maybe the most telling moment was what Daniel didn't say. In nearly every frame of the interview, he avoided speculation. He didn't ask out loud who might have taken the kids. He didn't voice suspicion of others. He didn't demand action. He never pleaded to the public for help. Why? Because a man who's managing a story knows better than to invite unpredictable questions. This brings us to the concept of leakage, the idea that guilty individuals often slip, unintentionally revealing more than they mean to. Sometimes it's in the way they deflect, or how they overcorrect. Daniel's moment may have been the blanket, or perhaps it was the smile that flickered across his face when he mentioned being nervous during the polygraph. A smile, however brief, in a conversation about missing children, is not normal. The public felt it. Comment sections lit up with discomfort. "He's too calm," some said. "He's hiding something," others wrote. And while public opinion isn't proof, it often reflects something visceral, the gut-level reaction that says, "This doesn't feel right." Daniel Martell's interview didn't reassure the public, it disturbed them. And perhaps most damning is this. For all the time Daniel spent speaking to the camera, not once did he beg for the safe return of the children. Not once did he cry. Not once did he show what millions of people were waiting to see, raw, uncontainable emotion. In Part 4, we will move deeper into motive. What might have pushed Daniel Martell over the edge? Was there tension building beneath the surface? Financial pressure, isolation, resentment toward children that weren't his? Part 4, motive, means, and opportunity. Did Daniel snap? In every criminal investigation, the triangle is always the same: motive, means, and opportunity. 3 pillars, 3 questions. Who had a reason? Who had the tools? Who had the chance? Strip away everything else: the emotion, the speculation, the media noise, and you're left with this framework. And when you apply it to the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, one name keeps echoing back through all 3 points: Daniel Martell. Let's start with motive. It's easy to say there was none, that Daniel had no reason to hurt the children, that he was just a stepfather trying to hold a fragile family together. But if you look closer, cracks begin to form. Daniel was living with Malahia Brooks Murray, the children's mother, in a crowded trailer, helping to raise 2 kids who weren't his, children with mild autism, children who may have required extra attention, extra patience, and extra energy. And on top of that, he now had a baby daughter of his own to care for. The pressure wasn't theoretical, it was daily, it was exhausting, and it was building. Before Daniel, the children's grandmother described a very different situation. Lilly and Jack used to visit her often. There was a bond, a routine, but once Malaya moved in with Daniel, that connection was severed. Visits stopped. Access was cut off. It wasn't just the end of a relationship, it was the erasure of a branch of their family. And in cases like this, isolation is rarely accidental. It's often deliberate, a tactic of control. Whether it came from Daniel or from the dynamics between him and Malaya, the result was the same. Fewer eyes on the children, fewer people involved in their lives, and less emotional backup when things got tense. Now consider what happens when frustration simmers. When a man who didn't father 2 kids is suddenly responsible for them. When finances are tight, when sleep is rare, when relationships strain. Resentment doesn't always look like rage. Sometimes it looks like silence, like avoidance, like emotional distance. And sometimes, under just the right pressure, it explodes in a single moment. Irreversible, unplanned, but devastating. Then comes the means. Daniel had access to the home, to the children, to their routine. He was not a visitor. He lived there, slept there, woke up in the same rooms where the children played and ate and disappeared. If anything happened inside that trailer, he would have known. If the children left through that sliding door, he was close enough to hear it, unless he was already distracted, or worse, unless they never made it to that door at all. The home was searched, thoroughly. The RCMP combed every room, every corner, every structure nearby. Wells, culverts, outbuildings. But what they didn't find was just as important as what they did. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, no unknown DNA. In short, no intruder, which leaves only those already inside. Daniel had the physical means to carry out and conceal an act. He had time. He had access. He had knowledge of the terrain. He even hinted during his interview that there was more evidence than the public knows. An odd statement from a man who claims innocence. Because why say that unless you're trying to control the narrative before it unravels? And finally, there's opportunity. On the morning of May 2nd, according to both Daniel and Malaya, the children were simply playing outside. They claimed to be feeding their baby and didn't notice the older kids slipping out. But in such a small space, with a sliding door that doesn't make noise, it's hard to imagine 2 young children escaping completely unnoticed. Harder still, when you realize no one else ever saw them that morning. No witnesses, no neighbors. No one saw Lilly or Jack after May 1st, except Daniel and the children's mother. So what if the opportunity didn't arise that morning at all? What if something happened the night before, and the narrative about a silent door and a quiet moment was simply a cover story, rehearsed enough to explain away a disappearance? It's the kind of question that investigators are trained to ask, and the kind of theory that fits too well when motive, means, and opportunity all align with a single person. If Daniel snapped, even for a moment, the consequences would be irreversible. And if that moment was followed by panic, by cleanup, by silence, by planting a blanket near a pipeline to send searchers in the wrong direction, then what we're looking at is not just a crime of passion. We're looking at an attempted cover-up, one so subtle, it's been hiding in plain sight since day one. The truth is, many people don't commit premeditated crimes. They lose control, they act impulsively, and what they do next is shaped not by the crime itself, but by the terror of being caught. They construct a version of events that seems plausible. They cooperate, but only up to a point. They say they're helping, but offer nothing new. They talk to the press, but only to defend themselves. And that's what Daniel has done. As we move into part 5, the final piece comes into focus. The question isn't just whether Daniel had the motive, the means, and the opportunity. The question becomes, what hasn't he told us? What hasn't he shown? And more importantly, what is the RCMP keeping quiet? Because silence in this case may be the loudest clue of all. Part 5, what the RCMP isn't saying about Daniel Martell. There's a kind of silence that feels strategic, not empty, not forgetful, but deliberate. That's the kind of silence surrounding the RCMP's treatment of Daniel Martell. From the early days of the investigation, they asked both him and the children's mother, Malehia Brooks Murray, not to speak publicly. They issued no Amber Alert. They released no suspect sketches. And while the case attracted hundreds of tips and volunteers, the flow of official information remained tightly controlled. Every press release carefully worded, every public statement clinical. And through all of it, Daniel Martell was never officially named as a suspect, but never fully cleared either. This is where the questions start to pile up. Why didn't RCMP disclose the discovery of Lilly's pink blanket themselves? Why was it Daniel who first revealed it to the media? Why didn't they correct him publicly or confirm his version of events? Was it because he spoke the truth, or because they didn't want to admit how much he knew? When asked about the polygraph, Daniel said he passed, but the RCMP never confirmed that either. Why not? If the test exonerated him, wouldn't it benefit the investigation to say so? Unless, of course, the results were inconclusive, or troubling, or simply irrelevant to a case where facts speak louder than wires and electrodes. The RCMP also never publicly ruled out foul play. Yet at the same time, they focused most of their search efforts on wooded areas near the home, as if the children had wandered off. That contradiction has never been fully explained. If they truly believed the children left on their own, why question Daniel so aggressively? Why ask him point blank if he killed them? 54 people have reportedly been interviewed in connection with this case, and some of them, according to reports, underwent polygraph testing. That's not standard procedure for a simple missing persons case, especially when authorities claim there's no evidence of abduction. So what then are they looking for? What have they found that the public hasn't been told? And here's the hardest truth of all. Perhaps they're holding back for a reason. In high-stakes investigations involving children, police often work quietly to avoid tipping off potential suspects, to preserve the integrity of future prosecution, to follow digital trails, test DNA, cross-check alibis, or even monitor behaviors over time. And if Daniel is under that kind of scrutiny, the silence surrounding him isn't an oversight. It's a tactic. But silence has a cost. It breeds speculation. It creates shadows. And in this case, the public has stepped in to fill the void. Thousands have watched Daniel's interviews. They've analyzed his words, his posture, his eyes. Some say he looks guilty. Others say he's just overwhelmed. But nearly all agree on one thing. Something doesn't add up. People have asked, why did he seem so calm? Why did he speak as if he were defending himself, not begging for the return of the children? Why did he reveal sensitive information before police did? Why did he never publicly address Lilly and Jack directly, not even once? These are the questions we're left with because the official ones aren't being answered. And maybe that's what the RCMP is waiting for. Not a confession, not a witness, but a mistake, a slip, something small. Because cases like this are rarely cracked wide open. They unravel slowly, one thread at a time. So what can we conclude? Did Daniel Martell act alone? Did something happen in a moment of anger or exhaustion? Was it a tragic accident, followed by panic and concealment? Or was it something darker, rooted in resentment and control? Did he act out of fear, or was this premeditated? Or is he truly innocent, and the real danger came from outside, unnoticed, undocumented, a stranger who slipped in and vanished without leaving a trace? The truth may not be known yet, but the silence is telling us something. And so is the public. Because in comment sections, online forums, and whispered conversations, People are doing what the system hasn't, asking the hard questions, re-watching his interviews, re-examining his words, comparing his reactions to those of other parents in similar tragedies. And piece by piece, the picture they're forming doesn't match the one Daniel has tried to paint. In the end, it may not be a single revelation that solves this case. It might be a series of doubts, inconsistencies, and quiet red flags, the kind only sharp, relentless attention can uncover. So now, the question turns to you. After hearing everything, the timeline, the blanket, the behavior, the missing emotion, the gaps in the RCMP's statements, what do you believe? Is Daniel Martell an innocent stepfather caught in a nightmare beyond his control? Or is he the one who knows exactly what happened and has managed to keep it buried, just beneath the surface? Because sometimes the person closest to the children isn't just a witness. They're the secret everyone is afraid to name. Children don't just need protection from danger. They need a world that refuses to ignore it. By asking questions, demanding truth, and staying informed, we take one step closer to a safer future for all children. Subscribe to True Child Cases, because awareness saves lives.